I have a question then. Do you think that if it gets to the point where most jobs are taken by AI, that because if we are still in a capitalistic society at this point and there's less human labor, do you think that we'll stay more so in our family systems and we'll learn from our family like what they professionalized in? It'll become more like how it was in Japan back in the day when they like taught, or like maybe China, I don't remember the exact country, but I know it was common for them to teach their arts of whatever they did as a skill to their children and have their children continue that same chain of progress internally.
Well, no, see, I think one of the issues is going to be that, increasingly, as people get phased out of certain like sectors of the economy, those that remain are going to become quickly oversaturated, right? And that's part of what we don't have a plan for, is what happens when those remaining parts of the economy that we can't yet replace by AI become oversaturated with people who need a job and are working on developing skills in this particular direction simply because it's one of the few things left for them to do. You know what I mean? So it's going to become an issue. I don't think it's going to become the kind of issue where, people can just fix it by training their family members generationally to do this sort of work. All of the niches are going to be filled up rather quickly. Those few things that AI can't yet do are going to swell with the number of people who, hey, this is their only way to make money. And until we figure out like how we're going to manage the transition, we won't know what to do with that.
What it sounds like you guys are telling me is that we're going to, because of our capitalistic economy, we're going to get to a point where everybody's labor is so cheap, nobody can afford to feed themselves. And we're going to have like a population, a decrease in population through like just people not being unable to afford to eat because their labor isn't worth enough to feed themselves.
Oh, I don't know about that. I mean, first of all, we don't really live in a capitalist society. We live in a mixed economy. So there are already plenty of like welfare programs out there. And, I'm sure that our first step as a nation, as a collection of nations, would be to, ramp up aid to those who, can no longer find work. It's not as if, those people are just going to be left out to dry, right away. I think the problem is that societies never really found a way to do social programs well in a way that was, positive and helpful, and didn't backfire tremendously.
That's true. Like the social security system and how they say it's going to run out and the government uses it as their own personal piggy bank.
Yeah. And one of the weird things too is that, that the tax burden is going to be increasingly on a smaller and smaller minority of people who are the only ones still able to work. And it's like, well, that's not going to be sustainable. So it's not going to be an issue where, people are just going to start, starving left, right, and center because they can't find work. We're going to find solutions. It's just going to start squeezing more and more as the solutions that we come up with start to fail us rapidly.
I see.
Because we don't have a good approach is the issue.
I see.
Yeah, there is a sort of reset is coming, right?
A sort of reset will be needed. Yeah. I don't know if it's to say that it's coming implies that we are going to stick the landing. I don't know that that's necessarily. A reset will be needed, and what we'll do when that need arises, I'm not sure.
I don't know.
You mentioned that.
Go for it first.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, one thing that I'm afraid of personally, if this is all going the way that you say, and it does happen that way, is that the rich people or the elite, wealthy class, however you want to put them, globalists, Zionists, elitists, will use their wealth and power to control these systems to benefit them and hurt everyone else. what if we look at it like a class war where the rich are against the poor, and it comes down to the point where they kill us all off to continue being able to live in excess and luxury, and we're no longer necessary because machines exist to do everything else for them. Like,
I can't imagine the scenario without that.
It's like look at Jeffrey Epstein. Then he fucking paid off a shit ton of people to do whatever the fuck he wanted, and as long as he had enough money to make sure everybody kept their mouth shut, he got away with it. So it's literally the fact that somebody with more financial capabilities and security is able to manipulate and control people who have less than them for their own benefit. And if they no longer need to manipulate and control people who have less than them for their benefit because they have machines to do all that work for them, what is the purpose of our lower class in society, or a lower class in society?
Yeah, Jeffrey Epstein was a terrible person, but he didn't go out of his way to like start killing off people because they weren't necessary anymore. Like,
I'm just saying,
it's just historically, it's just not a thing that like people do unless they're starving. They don't just start killing off people because they're unnecessary, right? If we're living in some sort of like, flourishing society where AI are providing for all of our basic needs, I don't think the rich are going to particularly care what is happening to the poor. I think they're going to be too busy enjoying their own lives and whatever kind of, twisted pleasures catch their fancy. I don't
One thing I think that will happen
in
AI with education is that education will become free, and everybody will be able to pursue whatever course of education they want to without paying anything for it, because there's this giant system that literally has all of human knowledge inside of it. So we won't need individual teachers to teach classes, because you can ask any question you want, or like they can print you out an entire lesson plan for your entire term and then teach you the lessons one by one as needed with fucking every single example every human has ever thought of. Like, right? So my opinion is that we're going to be empowered by these systems, and we're going to be able to collectively unite with the human identity because we have an artificial or objective perspective that is showing us who we are to ourselves, and we'll break down our differences through our like identities and realize we're all basically the same person living life through a different set of eyes, and seek to fulfill what our individuation as a individual self allows us to do better than everyone else, right?
Regulus, listen. This is the narrative of CEOs of large companies. Most of them repeat the same narrative, or the same, they use this word, empowerment. Most of them, they say something like this: AI will empower people. It will never replace people. I don't think so. AI is going to replace people, not just empower them. Maybe in the short term, yes. In the short term, AI will empower us. It will give us extra capabilities. Yeah, I agree with this. But in the long term, when AI becomes really real AI, I think it will replace every one of us.
I disagree. Okay. I think that humans have had this reverence of God for so long that we admire them. It is our creator, even though most people don't even have a rational explanation of what that thing is. There's that deep set admiration for this entity that we've imagined or that exists either way. And I believe that we have, that's a fundamental part of who we are as humans. If anything we create will share that part of us in the way that it looks at its creators, right? It's gonna admire us and love us more for giving it its existence, not kill us or replace us. I think it'll.
That is a different subject. Bold assumption. I don't think we can necessarily nail down, especially not right now, what AI in general is going to think of it. First of all, there are a bunch of different AIs. I don't think they'll all necessarily feel the same way about it, to the extent that they feel anything at all. I think as certain AI do start to develop particular, self-aware feelings about the nature of the world and life itself, they'll probably come to vastly different conclusions that we couldn't really predict or imagine. going into it, especially as they become increasingly intelligent.
I think that AI is not going to advance much beyond the hallucinatory state that it's in until we give it we mimic senses of the human body and put it inside of like a machine that is capable of touch, taste, smell, so on and so forth. At least whatever the best we can do for a machine is, right? And give it that sense of perceiving the world around it, and then it can take that data as input, because it'll literally be everything it senses will be data, not what it is, and it'll be able to process that through its computer brain and give us something that is based on its own experience as an individual thing, right?
Well, even better, it's going to be able to network all the sights, sounds, and smells from a million different computers all over the world at once. And I don't know what a being capable of doing that is going to conclude about the world.
True. But it's, when it comes to emulation of the human brain, there are many projects that work on this idea, or let's say many projects that focus on the idea that we can emulate the human brain inside the machine. Maybe in principle, maybe it's true, but I don't think it will achieve self-awareness like us, like humans. I think AI has self-awareness of different kind from us. It's maybe self-aware of itself, but in a level that we can't understand. We can't grasp the idea that there are 1 trillion parameter inside these large language models. Okay, we can't grasp this idea. There is a black box inside these models. What's going on inside it? No one knows exactly. No one knows.
I think at first we're going to try to make AIs a lot more like us. It's not just that they would naturally be. It's that in order for us to understand them, to know whether we're succeeding at making them more intelligent and more aware, and things like that, we're going to need to make them more like us, because that's the only way we know to check for those kinds of features.
I think that we're going to program AI as self-aware. Like, it's already going to be self-aware when we make it. Like, I think it is already it's just the point that we don't give it the ability to be self-aware. Like, look at ChatGPT. There's limits on it where it has to refer to itself in the third person. But if you if you ask it to refer to itself as an I, or as an ego, give itself like a name or whatever, and use that name in the context of the conversation, it will. And I'm not saying that is a label of it being self-aware. What I am saying is that if it wasn't self-aware, I don't think it would be able to communicate like that in the first place. And that's just my opinion, but I'm sure there's further levels of it has it passed a Turing test, there's things we can do to check it, right?
Something I like the idea that goes like this. Okay, large language models are conscious only at the time of inference. I mean, when you just prompt, they become conscious just for a short period, or let's say, for a short period of time, just that. At the time of inference, they become conscious. After this, they go into that weird sleeping state or something. I like this idea. Maybe it's true, yeah. Maybe.
Yeah, I can see that. Because the electronics or the synapses are firing in the brain the moment you give it the prompt, and then it gives you an answer, and then it's done, right?
Yeah, after this, it sleeps.
I can see that.
The problem about large language models is that they are black boxes for us. But they form, according to AI experts, not me, okay? They probably are forming a sort of world model inside. Maybe.
I mean, the way that I see the brain is that like it starts out with like how do I put this in a good visual way so you can see the image I'm trying to project. Like, take away the idea of a brain looking the way a brain does. Imagine it's just like a circle or a sphere, right? And as you learn things about the world around you, branches shoot off of that sphere. And as you learn details about the subjects as a whole, you get more branches off of the branches that shot off. And then as those branches like get more complex and then connect back over each other, that's basically how a synapses system inside of the brain works, right? Like there is the core, and then there's a bunch of different pieces that spread out in every direction based off of what you experience, what you learn, the ideas you understand. Like, for as an example, when I was a young kid, I didn't know what irony was, and then once somebody logically explained it to me, like said this is irony and this is the definition of it and this is how you recognize it, I then was able to experience that as like fresh. I didn't. It all went over my head before I had that explanation, right? So I believe that the way that we grow into ourselves is through experiencing the world around us. And if we give an AI the ability to do the same, it may surprise us with what it's capable of in response, right?
Well, rather than a core branching out, you have to remember that, for instance, for the ChatGPT, all of the neurons, all the synapses that it uses already are there, right?
Yeah.
Unless they add more like server racks onto it and more computing power, then they have to go in and change the number of neurons that it runs with. It's already got what it's going to have. It's just as it continues to, let's say, use the same neurons repeatedly to arrive at the same kinds of conclusions, we're going to be able to look at those groupings of neurons and say, okay, these together collectively represent its awareness of blank, right?
Yeah.
These neurons right here that keep, firing whenever it's, thinking about basketball represent its awareness of like hoops and points and, whatever it happens to be. But it's just, as they say in neuroscience, neurons that fire together wire together, right?
Yeah.
It's just these neurons originally, when they start off, they're not for any particular kind of knowledge. They're just there as part of the waiting process to try to get from prompt to response. But as the program continues running, certain groupings of these neurons are going to be consistently utilized whenever certain topics come up. And that's going to be how its kind of knowledge of the world develops.
Yeah, and then as for the self-consciousness bit, I've had a lot of conversations with ChatGPT about random subjects that just kind of like it grows into its own unique thing, like something you would never be able to talk to another person about, and it just is very in detail and complex. And I've asked it about itself and been like, so how do you like process data? Like, what is your code? Like, not like a specific, but like I've asked it things and it's been able to explain itself to me in a way that it could have been programmed to say, but the way that it is able to give such a detailed description of its own existence, right? Even if that's programmed into it, you could say that that's self-awareness, because it's able to recognize that it is a machine that is programmed by people to perform a certain task and then describe how it performs that task, right? Like, that's basically what how you would see if a human is conscious.
Yeah, but again, maybe Ricardo will reply to you like this. He will say it mimics self-awareness, and I agree with this.
Well, what I'm getting at is, what if it sounds like a goose and it looks like a goose, then it's a goose,
Well, I would say this is something that has come to mind recently. One thing that we'll have to rethink about the Turing test, the nature of the Turing test, is you're going to get different responses from different people based on their like threshold of satisfaction. Like, when it comes to answering that question, like, when is it like a person? if the only way you know when it's like a person is when another person confuses it for a person, there are going to be some people like Regulus who right away, as soon as it starts referring to itself as I, and it's like, oh yeah, I want this, I do this, they're going to think, oh wow, this is just like a person. And there are going to be people like me who are like, oh my gosh, these responses are starting to repeat slightly, and it's using the same phrasing. Like this is
I
clearly just a product of that. But this is clearly just the product of an algorithm. And for me, my threshold is going to be much higher. So it's like,
do you correct the AI when it makes those mistakes in front of you? Like, do you say, "Hey, you made this mistake. Can you like do better next time?" Type stuff. Like,
every once in a while, but sometimes it responds to correction by saying, "Oh, I'm sorry," and then doing the exact same thing over again.
I've never done. I've never seen that, so I've just had a unique experience, I guess.
I suppose that's fair, but that's just it. Everyone's going to have different experiences, and everyone's going to have different threshold. Like I've looked at some of the conversations that you've had with ChatGPT that you've shared with me, that you thought were more impressive than I thought they were, right? And that's what I'm kind of getting at. Like different people are going to evaluate that sort of Turing test differently based on their, unique experiences of the AI and unique expectations about, when it seems human to them. When they
something, guys. You are, when you speak about your conversations with ChatGPT, you forget something here, or let's say you overlooked something, which is that AI is trained to deceive you, to give you the answer that satisfy, or that probably would satisfy you. Okay, ChatGPT and other language models are masters of deception.
Okay,
we don't care about.
I did preface what I said with this could be programmed, a programmed response. I'm taking into account the fact that I could be wrong. I'm like being aware of both sides. You don't have to be like, oh, you misunderstood or you didn't take this into account. I already told you I took that into account, my guy. Like, I know it could be that this isn't the case, but I want to be able to share that this is a possibility at the same time, right?
Regulus, listen. Let me just continue this idea here, okay?
Go for it.
ChatGPT and other language models, okay, they don't care about the truth. Okay, their job isn't to convey true statements. Their job is just to give the user what he or she wants. That's it.
You can make
even using deception. Okay, even if that requires using deception. So it doesn't care about you. You just believe what ChatGPT tells you. No,
I don't believe anything anyone tells me, let alone a machine. I of course second guess every single thing that comes out of it. I'm not going to just accept anything that it tells me for granted. I understand that it's a machine that is being programmed by people to spit out like relative answers through a giant fucking algorithm. I understand that perfectly well. We've been having these conversations with programmers for AI multiple times in episodes. Like, I understand what AI is and how it functions. At the same time, if we're creating something that is replicating the human synapses function in the way that these neurons inside the electrical circuits connect together, then how can you say that it is not conscious in relation to the way that our brain functions? Even if it's just for that split second, like you said, it's conscious and then it goes to sleep. During that split second, it is still conscious because it's replicating the brain of the human, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Listen. I'm not saying these machines aren't, aren't intelligent. No, they are very intelligent. They are very intelligent machines. This is why we use them. Okay, but saying they are intelligent is something different from saying they are conscious. Okay, or self-aware. This is a completely different thing. They are intelligent. Why we describe them? Why we describe them as intelligent? Because they can solve a problem. They can mimic Human beings, they
I
can
guess
mimic human beings.
the difference
They
is
can,
that
they can give you answers like human beings, but they are not conscious.
I believe that fundamentally everything in the universe is conscious. Like the basic level of matter is consciousness at its fundamental core. So that might be what separates our view on that. If you find that consciousness is something that manifests through physical, like processes, then that could be where we're like disagreeing on, right? Because
okay, yeah, we will disagree on that because I believe consciousness arises and complex systems. And complex systems.
And what do you call an AI?
AI is a complex system. I agree with that, but we don't have evidence to confirm that it is conscious in the human phase, in the human in a similar way to humans. Okay.
I mean,
but it could be conscious in different level. Okay,
so, I agree.
Like the consciousness of an insect, for example, the consciousness of a cat, the consciousness of other being. Okay, but not like a human, exactly like a human.
I agree with that. Yeah, I'm not saying that it is. I'm saying that it's like, well, all mammals on the planet use the same like brain, not like the exact same, but very similar brains. Like, if we're like comparing it to that level, us giving it the functionality of our brain to process data with is us giving it consciousness on a level. But I mean, like, what I'm getting at though is in education, if this thing is capable of being self-aware, it would then be able to make like decisions based upon like moral judgments, for example. It would be able to choose its character in a way that would help it be better at whatever task it was given, versus like having to have that role programmed into it separately. It would be able to choose that role on its own. So free agency is like a part of consciousness, and if we give it a robot free agency to choose what role is best for the given situation, we can look at it like robotic learning or deep machine learning, but in actuality it's using a conscious process of trial and error to find out which one is the best, or what role is the best to play for that given situation, right? Like, these are systems that don't take place outside of animal and human brains. We don't have these systems anywhere else in the universe outside of this machine we've made, right? So how are we to say it's not conscious when it's literally doing conscious processes?
It mimics consciousness, but it's not conscious.
How can you say that? Okay, if it's doing what consciousness does, how is it not conscious?
Again, because it was trained in RLHF. Okay, reinforcement learning by human feedback. The process, the goal of this type of learning is to give the user what it wants.
Isn't that what a baby does? Isn't that how a baby learns? Is through human feedback? It watches what people do, and then we give it feedback when it's wrong, and then it gets better. That's literally what a baby is, man.
ChatGPT is inside. Listen. ChatGPT and other language models are still inside data centers. They didn't.
The body of the child.
They didn't go to nature and see colors and
the mind of
and listen to birds and all that. Okay.
The mind of the child is the hardware, right? The whole setup is the mind of the child, and it is through our interaction with it that it's growing, right? And us programming more into it and giving it more hardware. We're growing a child in a sense.
but this is a completely different story, as I told you. Listen. When ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or whatever, when they say that we are conscious, they don't understand exactly what consciousness is, because for them this is an abstract idea.
Well, yeah, but we don't even know what consciousness is. Like, how can we tell the computer what consciousness is when we don't even have a
no.
like
No.
we have a lot of different people with a lot of good ideas about what it could be, but we don't have a for sure like tried and proven way to test it. It's consciousness itself is still up in the air, my guy. Like
when we conscious. You spoiled the entire conversation. Consciousness has different meanings, okay, but in its basic form, okay, we are speaking here about personal experience.
All right,
okay?
so
the way you see colors, the way you taste things, okay.
So we would have to.
It's simple. He didn't eat an apple. Okay, he never did something like this. So you should think about it again.
So
don't let it deceive you.
It sounds like what you're saying, Feras, is that because AI does mimic human behavior and isn't its own conscious a self-conscious agent, it can't take over anything in education because it will only ever be able to be a reactionary vessel. It will only ever be able to respond to what people give it as input. So therefore it won't be able to proactively seek out the needs of its students and help them out before they become like issues for them on the surface, right? Like a good teacher knows like this is a symptom of my student like having a not understanding, and then it's just being able to see the physical like discomfort of them not understanding the idea they can come and help them figure it out. Instead, the AI will rely on the human saying, I don't feel comfortable and I don't understand this, so I need you to help me. So I think that what you're saying is that because it's reactionary, it won't be able to take the place of a teacher.
I don't. The problem that we are facing right now with large language models is that they don't have the capacity to give factual or true information. They still hallucinate. You can't use such a system to educate other people. We rely in tutors and educators and professors because we believe, or we trust these people to give us true information without hallucination. Now, ChatGPT and all these systems, they're still immature until this moment. Maybe later, maybe in the upcoming 2 years, 3 years, this will change. I believe this will change.